Hello Year 10s, Miss Bishop here again. Today we're going to be looking at the effects and responses of tectonic hazards. We're going to be looking at earthquakes this week, and then we will focus on a volcano and Typhoon Haiyan next week. So as I do it now, I just want you to remember, or try to remember, what you know about these two case studies. Okay, so Nepal and Christchurch, New Zealand. What do you remember about these two case studies, or where are they? Maybe that might help. Anything about them you can remember, just pause the screen and make some notes, because they might be correct, those notes, or they might actually be you might be thinking of another case study, so we can go through them and adjust your answers as need be. So in general, most primary, secondary effects and short and long-term responses are going to be the same. Doesn't matter what the case study is, just the numbers change. So you're going to have people dying, you're going to have people injured, you're going to have homes destroyed, and you're going to have people made homeless. You're going to have search and rescue teams. You're going to have government spending money, whether that be from the country's own government or whether it's from another country in the form of aid. You are going to have exactly the same primary and secondary effects. It's just the numbers. So one earthquake might kill 5,000 people, another might kill 25. That's the difference between the case studies. You're going to have the same effects. So please get down primary effects, secondary effects, short-term responses, and long-term responses. So split your page into 4, put a heading for those, and try and come up with some. Okay, because this is very important that you can come up with these on your own. I've already given you some examples, but when you're in your exam, you're going to need to be able to remember these things. So have a go, and then we can go through some in a minute. So please pause the screen here. Have a go at coming up with some answers, and then we will tailor them to the case studies in the next slide. Right, okay, so some primary effects might be death, injury, loss of power line, loss of home, flooding. Some secondary effects might then be grieving as sort of the secondary effect of death, or perhaps maybe disease if it's a poor country and these bodies can't be picked up and buried quickly enough. You might also have death as well if somebody was injured and then they die, a week, a month later from their injuries. You might also have homelessness. If somebody's home's been destroyed, then they could potentially become homeless. You've also got unemployment. If somebody's lost their job, you might have famine because crops have been destroyed due to flooding or due to, say, a volcanic eruption or something like that. Short-term response is going to be sending out evacuation teams. The army might come in to rescue people. You're going to have medical care. You might have makeshift hospitals put up. Some longer-term responses are going to be rebuilding damaged areas, maybe building some reinforced buildings. You might be coming up with action plans for it to happen in the future. It might be long-term aid. It might be replanting and re-sowing crops, etc., etc. Okay? So make sure you've got those down for me. What I want you to do now is, because these are fairly long, I'm not going to play these. Okay, but what I want you to do is I want you to look at both of these videos here. So they're both on YouTube. Okay, I want you to copy down those URLs, those codes, and put them into your YouTube. And I want you to watch them. The Christchurch one, you need to watch it from 8 minutes 20 seconds. Okay, because the first bit doesn't really, doesn't really apply. Okay, So can you do those for me? And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at a Word document after that, and go through some of the main points of the case studies. Okay, so can you, while you're watching these, fill out that matrix here that you've drawn, this effects and responses matrix. So try and fill them up. If you've got two different colours, do it. One in one colour, one in another. If you don't, then maybe do two separate ones just so you don't get them mixed up. Okay, so can you watch those videos and then join me afterwards for the rest of the lesson? Right. Now we're just going to focus now on more of the finer details. So I said that the case studies, the effects and the responses would be the same, but it's just the numbers that are different. So what we're going to do is you're going to create this table and just make sure that the details that you've got kind of match. Now, sometimes the Richter scale might change, because actually over time, when some time has passed, they might then reassess the Richter scale, do a bit more data on it, and it might go up or it might go down. Same with the deaths. If you're watching a news program and the deaths are, say, 500, and then you watch it again and it might be 800, it's because time has passed and they've either found more bodies or people have died as a result of their injuries. So as long as you've got the rough kind of ballpark, it doesn't really matter too much if you don't get it down to the exact number. And the Richter scale, usually it'll be, say, like 7.8, or you might see it written down as 7.9. That's not too much of an issue. I mean, it is if you are in a earthquake that goes from 7.8 to 7.9, because you'll know the difference. But for the answering of the question, as long as you've got it fairly correct, you'll be absolutely fine. So, Nepal earthquake of 2015 was a severe earthquake that measured 7.8 on the Richter scale. Excuse me. It was on a collision plate boundary. Now, these are the ones that we have looked at last week, with the one with the fold mountains forming. It struck near the city of Kathmandu in central Nepal. So you've got so this is north of India, south of China, that sort of area. It happened on April the 25th, 2015. About 9,000 people were killed, many thousands more were injured, and more than 600,000 structures in Kathmandu and other nearby towns were damaged or destroyed. Immediately after the earthquake, the Nepalese government declared a state of emergency. And soon, nearly the entire Nepalese army was assisting in rescue and recovery work. Nepal also called on the international community for aid. The UN quickly established the Nepal Earthquake 2015 Flash Appeal. And it raised approximately $415 million. So that would have helped them out a lot. Okay. So Nepal is, excuse me, is a poorer country, so it's going to rely more heavily on aid than, say, New Zealand, because it is a richer country, so the government can afford to fix things, whereas Nepal is a lot poorer, a lot more isolated, so they are going to need to have help in bringing in materials and paying for those materials. The second paragraph is a magnitude 6.2 earthquake occurred in Christchurch, New Zealand. Okay, so New Zealand is just next to Australia. Christchurch is the South Island. I was due to go to New Zealand in 2017, and there was an earthquake a couple of years before. A lot of our holiday was due to be based around Christchurch. We were going to go whale watching and things, but all the roads were destroyed, so we ended up having to not cancel that out of our plans, because it took them quite a while to rebuild all of the structures. Anyway, a magnitude 6.2 earthquake occurred in Christchurch, New Zealand on the 22nd of February 2011. It was on a conservative plate boundary. So New Zealand lies on a plate boundary where they slide past each other. Okay, so this is one where you get that build-up of pressure, like the San Andreas Fault in North America. It's exactly the same kind of fault line. It killed 185 people, and the city cathedral was badly damaged. Of the 185 people who died, 115 died in the Canterbury Television Building. So it would be like their version of, say, like the BBC building, okay? Because obviously those buildings are full of people. So a lot of those people were trapped and couldn't get out. The earthquake happened at lunchtime, where the city was even busier than normal. Following the earthquake, 80% of the city was left without power for 2 days. To respond, New Zealand set up a national emergency. So you can see that the Nepalese government declared a state of emergency. So the world helped them. In New Zealand, they themselves set up a fund and did it themselves. Okay, and they created a red zone. So where it was dangerous and where it was most damaged, the public were not allowed entry into that part of the city. The emergency department of Christchurch Hospital treated 231 patients within 1 hour of the earthquake. So luckily, I think in one of the news reports, there was actually a convention of doctors, I think it was urologists, who deal with sort of bladder issues and whatnot. But they had a convention, and luckily there was like a couple of hundred extra doctors in the city at the time. So they were able to help out and treat people that had been injured. So they were very quick to act, whereas Nepal, they were less so because they didn't have those funds. Although the army came in and helped rescue people in Nepal quite quickly, it took them quite a while to get the equipment that they needed. So their search and rescue would have taken a lot longer, and their medical care wouldn't have been as efficient as it was in New Zealand. Okay. Excuse me. So what we're going to do now is go back to the lesson. So you need to put some of these notes down into this table here. Okay. And what hello, what's this? Go away. And then what I want you to do is have a think. Why do people live near tectonic hazards? So just have a little discussion. You can do it at home with whoever's at home, or you can do it with your friends if you so wish. I want you to have a little think. Why do you think people live near tectonic hazards? Or no, like people that live in California, they know that there's going to be earthquakes. Like people in Japan, they know they're going to get earthquakes. Why do they still live there? Have a think about it, and we'll discuss that next lesson when we look at that aspect of the unit. But to finish off, I want you to have a go at this 6-mark question. So describe how the effects of an earthquake in a rich area of the world, HIC, so Christchurch, are different from the effects of an earthquake in a poorer area of the world, an LIC, such as Nepal. So you need to compare those statistics together and say why you think Christchurch suffered less than Nepal. 1, it was a weaker earthquake. Okay, that's a fact. But also, why else? Okay, send me your answers in. Some of them have been really good, and I will be feedbacking everyone else that has been giving me some answers, and I will speak to you all shortly. Okay, I'll speak to you next week, and we will carry on with this unit. Okay, bye.